Hello, I am in the middle of editing No Adults Allowed, and I'm live streaming it to see if that's an interesting thing to do. I will be talking about the decisions that I'm making as I go through this. Um, this is Scrivener 3, which has come out at last on Windows. I'm very excited. I've been waiting for this probably for like 3 years or something. It came out on Mac like last century, and for some reason the Windows version took a long time. I think they had a very small development team, but it is finally here. And it's great. If you are still using Word or something like that, Google Docs or whatever to write, if you're doing something short, that's fine. But if you're doing anything long form, anything that ends up resulting in a very large manuscript, then you kind of owe it to yourself to use Scrivener because it will get a lot of the technical stuff out of the way and let you focus on the actual writing. Um, it seems kind of intimidating at first, but trust me, once you get the hang of it and jump over just a couple of hurdles at the start, it will definitely speed things up and make the writing much more pleasurable. I should probably do a video that is actually about Scrivener and how I use it at some point. Anyway, right, I'm halfway through editing this chapter, so let's see how this goes. At the moment, this character Eva has just woken up. She's on top of this massive, ridiculous wall, which is like skyscraper high kind of thing. The sun's just come up, and her little team are going to get their first look at what is on the other side of this wall that they've been looking at for ages. And I'm basically doing line editing here. I'm not expecting any major structural or kind of action slash plot changes. So line editing, fixing any typos I spot, and kind of really deepening any character stuff, making sure that that's all woven through the whole thing. So yeah, I'll try and explain my decisions as I go. So let's do it. Yeah, this original version didn't get the excitement that this character would definitely feel from getting her first glimpse of what's on the other side of the wall, which incidentally is a massive city, which for these people who have lived in tiny villages their whole lives, it's a big deal, basically. And she's a scientist, she's a researcher, she likes discovering stuff and seeing what's going on, so she would definitely find it to be one of the most amazing things she's ever seen. There's an interesting vocabulary issue writing this book because it's set in the future. Only kids are around still, and they have no memory or experience of like the before times, a bit like us in lockdown. But it means that I have to be very careful with using colloquialisms for modern day or phrases that relate to kind of 21st century living that would mean nothing to them. And even using something like the word city, like they have no experience of a city. They have no understanding really of what that means. So it's like I don't want to have to use some weird made up word to represent that. Um, but I have to justify the fact that Eva is able to internally make use of that word. I don't want to make too much of a big deal out of it in the prose, but it's just something to cover so that it's always reinforcing the fact that they're cut off from the society that we're familiar with. So this temple that they did grow up with, which is kind of school, teacher, parent, educated them. I can use that as a way that that's how they're aware of these things, even if it was a theoretical concept rather than something that was supposed to actually exist. trying to encapsulate what seeing a major capital city like we have nowadays, what that would seem like to someone who has only ever seen, you know, only ever known a couple of hundred people in her life and only seen as small clusters of buildings made from wood and rock and that kind of stuff. So yeah, on one side of this wall there's this massive city, and on the other side there's countryside, nothing really, just rolling fields and not much more. It's a peculiar divider between those two sections. Uh, this is pretty much the first time I've done any streaming, but I think, monitoring the chat. So you can leave a message and it should hopefully pop up for me to check out. If you have any questions about this or the editing process or Scrivener or anything like that. Yeah, so this city is old and fallen apart, and classic post-apocalyptic, overgrown city type scenario. But of course, to Eva, she's never seen a bustling, functioning city, so it's going to take her a moment to realize that it's not as it should be. Most of the buildings were tilted and cracked. I'm just swapping this sentence around basically. Um, it's really hard to describe the process of editing where you maybe swap around the focus of a sentence. It ends up saying exactly the same thing, mostly the same words, just in a different order. But then I guess that's writing, isn't it? It's getting all the words is the easy bit. Putting them in the right order is the especially hard bit. Yeah, mentioning lichens, I mean, she's going to be too far away at this point to make out specific details like that. So we'll stick with the moss and the vines. Okay, so now we've got this little introspective section here with Eva, who conveniently awoke first on her own, so that we could get that nice kind of inner experience. We now have the other characters waking up to offer their reactions as well. Flick here is a character who lives out on her own, usually in the wilderness, and fends for herself, lives off the land. So the first thing she notices, of course, is that there are no trees. Um, handily kind of helping describe the scene for the readers, but also kind of providing some insight into her character at the same time, which is what you always want to be doing if you possibly can. Wine. Yeah, I added a bit up here in the edit just now, where Eva couldn't sleep well because she didn't know if they'd be able to get off this wall, basically this mammoth gargantuan a wall, which they might just be stuck on the top of it forever and ever. But Flick, being always practical, has figured it out already. Glad you're here, Flick. That's Frodo talking to Sam, really, isn't it? So yeah, they used to be friends, haven't seen each other for years, and now Flick is back to save the day, essentially, and has done already. Um, Flick's always held a candle for Eva, but unrequited, alas. One of the great things about Scrivener 3, which I don't think Scrivener 2 had it, Scrivener 1 even on Windows. I don't think it had it in the same way, but if you just hover your mouse over the search box up here, not only do you get a word count for the book in total, you also get a session word count. So I can see that I've written 293 words in this session, which I'm editing at the moment, so I'm doing a lot of work that doesn't actually amount to a word count, but very useful if you're just writing fresh stuff. Okay, about halfway through this chapter. I am probably going to take a break just there. Um, so yeah, thank you to the suspicious single person watching on Twitch. Glad to have you here. Um, I'll be doing more of this, and hopefully this is a useful way of looking at my process. I'll probably go over Scrivener in a bit more detail in the coming streams, but in the meantime,